For the first time in 20 years, a high-level Eritrean delegation has officially entered Ethiopia. The diplomats arrived in Addis Ababa for a visit that could mark the end of a tense relationship between the two neighboring countries. Now, the thaw in relations follows the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's announcement earlier this month that his country would withdraw from the contested territory between the two countries. Now, let's remind ourselves how we got here. On May 24th, 1993, Eritrea officially declared independence from Ethiopia. 5 years later, a border war over the disputed region began. On December 12, 2000, the Algiers peace agreement was signed after over 7 years of fighting and tens of thousands of deaths. But it wasn't until April 2002 that the Eritrea-Ethiopia Boundary Commission delivered its final and binding ruling that outlined the definitive borders. Ethiopia's previous leaders said they accepted the ruling but never actually implemented it. Now, on June 5th of this year, Ethiopia's Prime Minister said his country will fully accept and implement the 2002 peace deal. Now, our reporter Kalkidan Yebeltal was at the airport in Addis Ababa for that historic arrival and sent this report.
Smiles, music and dancing at Addis Ababa's Bole International Airport. A delegation led by Eritrea's Foreign Minister Usman Salah and Presidential Advisor Yemane Gabrab lands for an historic visit. Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed received the delegation. Since coming to power 3 months ago, Abiy made the normalization of relations with neighboring Eritrea a major pledge. Eritrea has long called on Ethiopia to unconditionally accept the 2002 ruling agreement on boundary, including the withdrawal of troops from the town of Badme. Earlier this month, Ethiopia indicated that it will cede the disputed territory, which many see as a major step in mending the relations between the countries that have strong cultural and historical ties. But not everyone appears to be happy. Thousands of people held protests in the disputed town of Badme after the announcement it would become Eritrean. While it's still very early days, many people in both countries seem to welcome the move and hope for the ending of one of Africa's longest conflicts.
Well, Ambassador Andebran Georges is a former Eritrean ambassador attached to various countries, including the European Union. He was also involved in the international negotiations during the Ethiopia-Eritrea border crisis. He joins us now from Brussels. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. Now, this visit is being seen as a major step towards mending relations between Ethiopia and Eritrea, and it does look quite straightforward. But is it?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Sophie, in the first place. I think it's a very important milestone. It will begin defreezing the long frozen conflict between the two countries, which has lasted for about 2 decades now. And the last 3 months in Ethiopia have seen very significant developments in terms of internal governance, and also in terms of addressing the issues that have divided Eritrea and Ethiopia and led, of course, to a very bloody, destructive, one of the bloodiest wars in modern African history. And now the stage seems set for a durable resolution of the boundary issue, the restoration of bilateral relations between Eritrea and Ethiopia, and also, I think, the beginning of focus for the two countries on their internal challenges of governance and development.
You sound quite positive, but there are people who actually say there are realities that could actually pose a problem for the new Prime Minister.
Yes, I do recognize that there are very significant challenges. But the boundary issue is really a done deal. And the solution to it is quite easy and straightforward. In fact, the issue of the boundary in post-colonial Africa has been sacrosanct. You know, the OAU Charter, the 1964 Cairo Declaration, they have declared the sanctity of the colonial borders as inherited at independence. And the problem for this was tampering with the colonial borders, which lasted for about a whole century in 1997, unilaterally by the by the administrative region of Tigray in northern Ethiopia. So I think the restoration of the historical colonial treaty border, which is clearly demarcated by natural barriers like rivers, river beds, and the geometric coordinates, is going to be not difficult to implement.
But you say that, but there are many Tigray residents who are in Badme and they are opposed to this decision. And some of them who actually are veterans say this is really a betrayal of the sacrifices they made. How will the Prime Minister appease this group that says this shouldn't go ahead?
The people now demonstrating in Badme's environs were settled after July 2002, after the delimitation decision of the Boundary Commission was delivered. The Boundary Commission is on record ordering the dismantling of the settlements. When the Ethiopian government then refused to dismantle them, the Security Council seized the matter and passed a resolution calling on the Ethiopian government to dismantle the settlements, return the Tigrayan settlers into their homes of origin, but the Ethiopian government refused also to implement the resolution of the UN Security Council.
I'd like to interrupt you there because that history is already tabled, but the reality of it right now is that we are looking at a progressive regime and another that is perceived to be hardline. How do they meet at the table, and what kind of discussion do you imagine them having? Quickly.
Yes, this is a very important question because in Ethiopia, we have a forward-looking prime minister who has implemented quite dramatic change during the last three months. And in Eritrea, you have a backward-looking regime that's very repressive, that has its own governance problems, a government that has no constitution, no parliament, and is known for its gross violations of human rights. So there are difficulties here. But the problem now is the boundary issue. And once the boundary issue is resolved, I believe both countries will fully focus their efforts, their energies on addressing their domestic challenges of democratic governance and democratic development.
All right. Ambassador Andreban Georges, obviously this is a situation that we'll all be monitoring. Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on Focus on Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sophie.